Live?
Yep.
Excellent. Hello, world. This is the Jez Temple, and we are doing our Salon of Enlightenment. Today, we're going to be having sort of a grab bag of things, just some odd things and items that I've collected. I thought we could go over, but we definitely want to start off with Ben. He has a recital to us to give us a 2.0 version of the one he gave before, so we're excited to see how he does this time around. We'll do brief introductions and then get right into it. I am Nai G Coach.
I am Naiji Ben.
This is Nai Glenn.
And Nijai Starklow.
Excellent. So, Ben, take it away.
Alright, sounds good. I was born in the 80s with that summertime love, then I changed the whole game like whatever I'd done. Out the gutter I come, to touch the bright sun, and from the highest heights, motherfucker, I jump. Free in the sky of belief I can fly, and no telling what they're selling, man, they're sheep in disguise. Keep this in mind, I keep on my grind, I can do any way I want to do, and bitch, I'll sleep when I die. Explosive, ferocious, get up, get down, let's show this. Power to the people who have freedom in their focus. I hope this helps you when you're under the thumb, when you feel like nothing can save you, when you feel like jumping the gun. Stop, relax, and remember, even in the worst weather, you'll find a way to cross it. There'll be brighter days, honest. So get up, get out, get something that's on the real. Forget where you were taught and show these people how you feel. Like, who are you to tell me how to live my life? 'Cause I won't give this up. These are my shoes, my view, my cue. Say I do give a fuck, and pretty soon I'm a bloomer and it'll be alright. Every day's another chance tonight, 'cause I'm addicted to this universal feeling called life. Since a fetus explored life's subtle secrets, from my fingertips to my unique double helix, I can see history, I can see the past lessons. It's your right, never be afraid to ask questions. How can every religion claim to be the only one? How can they preach love, yet fight each other holding guns? I think the golden sun might be able to shed some light. I'd rather push peace and knowledge to defend our rights. These leaders in suits tell us to fight from one side. You think they got their sons and daughters on the front line? Not down for war, but down to get an education. We're all equal, yet they push synthetic separation. But in this matrix, I won't be failing to make it. This is my cosmos, baby. Space sailing with Sagan. I heard it's not where you're from, it's where you're carving your view. I heard you don't have to wear a suit to argue the truth. And so, who are you to tell me how to live my life? 'Cause I won't give this up. These are my shoes, my view, my cue. Say I do give a fuck, and pretty soon I'm a bloomin' and it'll be alright. Every day's another chance tonight, 'cause I'm addicted to this universal feeling called life. They spoon feed, but I won't be taking that sedative, 'cause my thoughts are way too precious to waste on the negative. I keep them critical yet positive to break the chains. Every dawn is a new chance to make a change. Think about all this energy flowing all around us. We projected, we affected by, this is profound stuff. Earth is my gun and I grew from it. I pay youth homage 'cause I know the view's honest. Can you read between the lines of the news comments? Fighting over land just to take some fuel from it. I guess oil boils down to some cool profits. But whoa, what is it good for? Really, who wants it? Like, who are you to tell me how to live my life? 'Cause I won't give this up. These are my shoes, my view, my cue. To say I do give a fuck, and pretty soon I'm a bloomin' and it'll be alright. Every day's another chance tonight, 'cause I'm addicted to this universal feeling called life.
That was awesome!
Really good.
Well done, sir. Well done.
I'm losing my breath.
That was awesome, man!
Thank you.
How you feel?
I lost my breath like half.
Yeah, I know, but you went right through it. Now that's what I'm talking about. You did a good job with that, by the way. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Curious, since you're kind of in the moment right now, kind of getting into sports, you like grabbing the touchdown. So, how do you feel right now? What's going through your mind right now? What is going through your mind right now, sir?
I don't know, my hands are shaking.
It's good. Does that mean like high level like theory? Then it can be like, are you feeling something like adrenaline? Or what's going on with you?
Yeah, I'm feeling a lot of adrenaline. Breathless. Not. I don't know. It feels. I don't know.
No worries. worries.
Just
Mind-
kidding.
if
Obviously, just
if
a little bit.
If you mind, if we use this to jump to the next kind of thing, discussion-wise, Ben, using what you just did there a little bit as an example.
Sure thing. Sounds
I want
great.
to talk about, for sure, the main one I want to talk about creative expression, how important it is for the tribe in general, but the Nejez in particular, they really need forms of creative expression to understand themselves, to empower themselves, and to connect with the world.
One thing. I noticed my voice was like really like powerful. Like it was more powerful than when I was rehearsing it. Like
definitely, and it was more powerful the first time too.
It sounded like so epic. Like I don't know.
No, definitely. There's several things going on that. So I'm going to use what he just did there as like an example and kind of talk about what's going on because it relates to just creative expression in general, particularly as it is interwoven with the spiritual experience and the seeker's journey. And so there's a lot of like leveling up and a lot of self-discovery and courage checks that go along with it. So that's why it's so rewarding because if you're able to do this in some form, it will translate to just generally having more of a natural, I know what I am and I like what I am. Mm-hmm. And that translates to everything that you do. You know the old saying, you can't really expect other people to tell you about yourself or to, make it a thing. You have to do that first. That kind of self-love, if you love what you do, and how your peak pathway works, then that will just bonus deck anything you do in life. So some things I noted. One is that your confidence level was higher. You knew what you had to do, and you also knew that it was going to get a little gnarly because it's just going to be a little gnarly, and you were ready for it. So your voice came out strong to kind of like make the moment yours, because the moment kind of has its way with you, or you have your way with the moment. That is the way existence works. So this time around, I could feel more like you were taking charge. The first one was great because you actually did a courage check and got your head above water and showed yourself off. But here, I felt like you had something you wanted to get across, and that was your mindset. For one thing, as an audience, I kind of just started dropping relatively quickly my worry for you of how nervous will Ben be. This is kind of a gnarly thing, and when your voice came out like that, I just sort of dropped that and just got taken more into what you had to say and the way you were saying it.
Yeah,
because the confidence just really just sort of like, oh, he knows where he's going, and it just took me.
I think what helped is I felt that getting through it, like after how much I practice it, the getting through it was, in a way that, without stopping, was a given, and that sort of made it more about just like, doing my best to express that, not so much focusing on, just getting through it, but also focusing on just doing whatever I could to best convey that message. Yeah.
That's a kind of spiritual flexing you're doing. That will be done so many points in life where you need to talk with someone, where it's been uncomfortable conversation needs to happen, or you need to just explain to people things that maybe at first they'll be confused, and you just have to talk through it and know your voice has the right things to say and is saying them strongly. It's an invaluable skill, and really, beyond just a skill, it's like a knowing that you can do that. That you're creating a voice, and like I can now make that voice. I can summon it, because you actually summoned it, as you mentioned when you came into the song, David. I saw you re-summon it a few times throughout in order to kind of get yourself back where you wanted to be, or to make the direction of the song go a certain way. That's just so invaluable. But
what specifically did I bring back in summon? Sorry.
Well, basically, you did spiritual flexing, and I'll talk about the specifics in a second here, but at least like a handful of times you did some various maneuvers, which I'll get into, to make yourself be what you wanted.
Yeah.
That ability to summon that and like put yourself in a mood and keep that mood, regain that mood, push that mood through, that's super important, particularly everyone should really do it, but the Nejez being so high on the SS index, that's a very has its subtle power, but it runs everything we do. This is the power of the storyteller. You know what I mean? The power of the problem solver. What you would call it, but like those juices is crucial. If you want some specifics, I'll tell you some ones I mentioned. I saw. First, when you came in, when you get on the mat with someone, there's different energies an opponent will give you. Not my opponent, but I'm reading you. And when you look at someone taking the stage, particularly in IG in this way, they're kind of taking on the world. So I was reading your stance. In your first one, you were determined not to fall over, which was great. Here, you were actually determined to go a direction. So I felt coming in, you had like a lean towards you. Like, I know where I want this match to go. I know where I want this song to go. And you started leaning into it. There wasn't the shyness. Kind of like I've mentioned before, like people like in the MMA, for example, they may initially come in cold, and then they lean into the experience after it gets going for a little while. But over time, they then learn that spirit, and they lean in when they start. You began today lean in the direction you wanted to go. So that was one spiritual maneuver I knew right away, which caused me to drop a lot of concern I had for your nervousness. The other ones I saw, one was when you started losing the breath. You noted you were losing the breath, and I don't know if you did this consciously, but I believe my eyes read on you was, I'm not actually out of breath. I'm out of breath because it's nerves or something, but I've rehearsed this a bunch, and I've never had any wind issues. So body, chill out. You're not actually out of breath. And you did. You basically made yourself stop being out of breath. Almost, I saw you do it. You kind of just paused for a second, like looked away for a little bit, and then you came back and you're like, okay, enough of that. And you basically like just.
It's a situation where like I know there's like I know I have like the breathing efficiency to make it through this, you know. So there isn't a reason I should lose breath. So I just sort of like, you know, I just kind of, I don't know, I kind of just detached and let my spirits take over more, and I was able to get through it without running out.
I noticed that you were able to like really take that energy of being a little bit out of breath and use it to your advantage to make the melody kind of still continue going. Like it was kind of like going fast and fast and fast, but then when you noticed your breath was kind of a little bit going away, you sort of like slowed down, but the way that you expressed the words was still there. It was still like very powerful, and then you sped it up again. So it was like a nice little.
That's a very good observation, Glenn. Very good observation. That's actually what I was going to bring up next. Good noting that. You did two kind of spiritual maneuvers back to back. One is one I just mentioned, where you kind of like said to your Daryu, and I'll mention this now. This is a ritual I do with my Daryu all the time, where I'll notice that I'm having like responses of fear or anxiety, and I actually say to them, "Hey, train for this. Give me my mastery. Give me my fluency. I've earned it." And you kind of eyeball your Daryu to get in line and start being a helper, not a hindrance. Then the third thing, which Glenn's referring to, is you noted that pause, and before you kind of like, okay, that's a bit of a pause, but it is what it is, and I'm gonna keep going forward and not let that stop me. You kind of noted that was like a demerit, so to speak, and go forward. Here you did something different, stronger maneuver. You're like, this is my moment. And that's what Glenn was noting. When you came out of like easing off the out of breath thing, getting under control, when you came back, you kind of looked like, and now that timeout is over, here's back to what I was saying. That's what Glenn was saying. Your whole face kind of like said, I got that covered, now back to me spitting truth at you. And you did it non-verbally, and it made what Glenn was saying, when you went back to going fast and strong again, it was almost a cool interlude. You spun it, so it was a cool interlude.
Yeah.
It was really quite neat.
Yeah, it feels pretty natural that way too. It's like, it feels like a very natural progression, because that isn't rehearsed, and it's like it actually blends into the message in a certain way. It's like, this is me,
It's true, because you're naturally going to tell a story, and as you get more control of telling that story, then if someone hiccups in the crowd, you can pause and actually make a statement on that relates to the story and go right back on beat because you want to control the story. So even here, when you took a time out to settle your own breathing, it was like you were the DJ of the story. That was a level of like ego that actually made it cool. I think it's what Glenn's referencing there. It was well done. It happened in the moment, but that can be done again. Now that you know I can do that, I can even use like a dramatic like, oh, I stubbed my toe. I can actually work that in to where it's cool. If I continue to own the moment, and you did, you got your breathing back, and then you kept going in, owning the moment. No apologies. No apologies. That was good. Two more things that I saw you doing later on. One, you either weren't having this level before or you were uncomfortable showing it. You actually showed your temper. I saw it flare up a few times, particularly in the second half of the song. Little tiny flare-ups, but I noticed either you were like, knew the nerves were there, or there was some sort of like faux fatigue going on, and your anger just, you kind of like hit the burners. I saw like some intensity go to your face, you were going, and you kind of just like got angry and just muscled it. That's another spell. Also important, and use that one as well.
Yeah, and it's funny because like I can't see my face like while I'm doing it, but I can like hear in the voice like it can sort of like feel like coming out of me, you know.
It was good. It worked. So it allowed you to keep where you wanted to go, and it sounded masterful and in control. And then the fifth one, maneuver I saw you doing was, originally, I think you were looking mainly at the camera, which is good, and you were also doing quick looks away, also good, but you were, I don't know, maybe leery of drifting long, thinking you might look like you didn't know the words. Here towards the end, you did something which is just natural to happen. You started drifting, but you weren't worried about it look like you remember the words. You were getting into it. And so you actually kind of were just like this for a little bit there. Eyes sort of like, very narrowed and everything.
I noticed that's actually really helped me a lot. I just kind of just go into quasi state, and
it lets you get the quasi state better, and that
yeah,
just happens.
that's what I was actually the state I was in generally most of the time, which is, I had no like expectations of like I knew I was doing my best, but I like no expectations how high that was going to be. I was just really focused on doing that the best I could. Knowing that I would get through it in that state. And that
works. What you're talking about there is actually summoning basically your genius, summoning your courage. Basically, like when you need to be on, this is a great way to train you to be on, because this muscle, like when you were doing it, you had to be remembering words, stage presence with your body, charisma with your G, nigh of like, why am I doing this, plus the ego and like I'm going to do it. Like it's a lot of tsunami. You're summoning it and keeping it up under a situation that a lot of people is daunted. That's an incredible power to be able to have. So keep doing it. Whatever you do in your life, I recommend everyone have at least some creative expression they use to kind of like flex on. It'll just really help them summon themselves, and they can use it for anything.
Yeah, I just watched the replay on YouTube. That was really good, man.
Thank you.
It was a big difference from last time. Like you were totally. It was just much more natural.
I practiced it like a bunch more times, just like kind of doing it how I want to do it, and I just did it.
And on that, the practice, not just that there's the repetition, which is very important, but also the visualizing of like this is happening. You'll find that your spirits will reward you more when you actually carve out in your psyche and in your life space. That shows you're not messing around. You're serious. You want to dialogue with them because you're carving out this space for it. And what will start happening then is they'll be like, okay, we're doing this. And then I think you kind of alluded to this a bit, Ben. When you get to where you're doing it a bit, it's like you and your spirits are doing it together. And then sometimes you quite lose yourself maybe a little bit. The team just keeps on doing it. Like, that's why we are here. That's what we are going to be doing today. You'll find that actually you can do some gnarly stuff as far as like dealing with fear that scares a lot of people. not just like stage artistic stuff, but like real world concrete stuff by some mistake. Like MMA fighters like Niger, for example, that's one thing that they are able to do is to summon like this artsy state while gnarly stuff's happening around them. Nijai use it for a lot of things as well. I've seen a lot of them, for example, with some academic abilities they have, where you would not think that that works for them, but they're actually getting into an artsy state and then playing a game. And a game that happens to be recognized by some sort of like standardized thing, but they can like knock it out of the park, but you have to get up. And that's going to be the interpretive powers and the passion. Got to get that going. Anyway, great job, Ben. So I'd like to kind of hand off the floor now. Any thoughts on that as far as people's own creative expression or questions they might have? This is a good start.
Good.
Well, how about this? I'll start off then. I'll start with Ben, and then you can go on from there. So, like, Ben, what are you thinking perhaps you might want to do next? Do you have any ideas? And for other people, are there things you've done before or doing now or might do in the future? Think of all this kind of creative expression and what it means to you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've considered, there's other songs, of course, and there's also, some scenes that I really like from movies and TV shows that I could think about doing. I haven't rehearsed anything else other than this, so I want to try some different things out to kind of see where exactly I want to go with that. But I know I've got stuff that I could definitely jump on. There's also a few speeches that I really like that I could use. I used to do speech and debate, so there's some things I could pull up.
Yeah.
Do my own.
All three of those will have a little bit of added challenge to them, and thus rewards to them. One is if you pick another song and do the same thing you did now, if you pick a different tone, you'll be flexing a different muscle. So you'll be doing a similar thing, but this song had a particular tone and message to it.
I could also just go further with this song and maybe start changing words and stuff. And
say again?
I could go further with this song and start changing words and stuff to make it more.
You could. In fact, that's what I was specifically going to say. There's another thing you can do. So one is you could pick another song and take it to this level, and if it's a different mood, different message, that will be another challenge, like a video game yourself.
Yeah, it would expand like that skill tree to that point, as opposed to going further with. But I mean, I could go further with this one by picking something similar too, that has a similar voice. But
well, you could, but actually, you can take
there's
this
different
song.
dimensions that kind of.
But you could also take this song further in of itself. The next level from what you're doing right now, that may seem a bit like out there and therefore doesn't have power for you, is being on beat. Because what you're doing, whether you do it or not, you were being on beat because you're basically delivering it similar to how you've heard delivered with that rhythm. That rhythm is set to a beat. So taking a metronome, if you were doing a performance for us again in the near future, is doing the metronome. You're going to find two powers with it. The power of being able to do what you're saying on a specific Zai beat, and even just a thump, 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 thump with your words a thump, your words a thump, your words a thump, your words a thump. You'll start feeling the power of music. It'll go from spoken word to music. That alone, doing just what you did and adding the metronome, makes it music. That's the simplest music humans have ever done, just whacking with a stick or a rock on rock while someone delivers words or singing in that rhythm. That make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense.
That will unlock this song. That will unlock this song to the next level, which is taking you to where you have at least one song that you can do to a beat. That make sense?
Oh, sorry. What do you say?
Having a song that you can do to a beat. Because right now you don't have the ability or have not yet demonstrated it that you can deliver it on a beat. If you do that, that's another level in your video game, your HRL.
On
a metronome
the song that I just did, or
yes.
Doing it. What do you mean by doing it to a beat again? Sorry.
Basically, every song that you're going to be listening to is going to have a tempo. Beats in it, and usually it's done with percussion, like a drum or something. But long story short, did you notice?
So having a consistent tempo.
The music behind you in the background.
Right now, here, I'll explain to you. Look at my hands. Okay?
Yeah.
When you were talking, you were doing this naturally. Okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
That rhythm, that's basically the 4 beats on a bar rhythm. You're doing it naturally because that's the way the song is delivered. But you're doing it freeform, meaning there is a slight variation, to more than a little bit variation, on what tempo you're doing it. Your bars that you're doing as you deliver this line, there's probably a slight difference in each one. And that's because what you're doing right now is partway between like doing music and partway between doing acting. So you can actually up the acting, which is the other thing I was talking about. You can do like a movie scene or speech where the ideas are very clearly given across like dialogue. And that can be challenging because you don't have to worry about rhythm, a beat, but you now are basically embodying the character without any of the, bells and whistles of doing things on rhythm with rhymes and so forth. You're kind of just speaking, so you're being in the character and the mood is the most important thing. Does that make sense? So you can.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you want to take this more to the realm of song, the core to that is being able to do it onto a beat. I can help you with it if you want.
Oh, yeah, I'm just interested, I guess practically, how would I do that? Would I guess, listen to the beat while I do it, or?
Yeah, and you need help breaking down, but we can work that as well. But basically, you're going to divide when you think the words, like, you say sentence, it's the easiest way to say it. Most of the time you're saying a sentence, there's actually like a few fragments in there. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. That's a sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So you time them so you're actually kind of coming down a little emphasis on each beat. And you were naturally doing that. So just,
Oh, I see. Okay, that makes
you're
sense.
already doing it. So the question is,
So giving it more musical structure.
right.
Okay.
You're going to then start just getting to where you could be on beat. And if you could do that, then this is the magic of it. Any instrument in the world can now be paired with you. Any other singer, any other spoken word artist, simply if you can put a metronome on a given beat and do it in time to that, you can tell other people this is the time we're using, and any musically inclined artist, voice or instrument, electronica, they can go along. But that's the magic thing you have to do. So if you want to take this further in that direction, metronome work. That's where you have to do next, is put it on a metronome.
That makes sense. Thank you very much.
Totally.
And practicality-wise, you can go on YouTube and like plug. There's metronome beats, there's drum beats on YouTube. That all it is a drum beat. You can plug that, listen to that while you're talking. But the thing that I wanted to add to what Coach is saying is learning that division.
Stop real quick. Please continue, but I can barely see your face.
Oh, do you need light bright or?
No, just
is it darkness?
Eyes. I'm seeing this.
Okay. I'm on a tablet, so I'm not used to.
Okay.
Okay. Am I up high enough now?
We see part of your mouth. Keep going.
Okay, let's see. So I was gonna add part of the reason for this in developing that consciousness of set time beats is because it makes even your speaking voice in a regular sentence, in a regular conversation, more powerful. It makes it more
Melodic.
Yeah, but I was gonna say it's more you pull people along with you. You push people in the direction you want them to go. It's
There's actual hypnosis to an even rhythm, and if you can actually speak in it or do things in it, like even dancing, not even words, just motions to it. There's something magical about doing things in time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes it more impactful.
That's the thing behind why it's.
I'm theorying this. It's my theory on that, Glenn. It's kind of like thump, 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 thump. It's like that's like a very simple like pulse beat of nature at different tempos. And if you're able to flow with it as a dancer, singer, vocalist, anything like that, shooting a gun, but you can do it in time, somehow it's not actually exactly true, but there is something to it. It definitely feels like natural law saying, yup, which is why
Yep, go that way. Go that way.
Your spoken words to be things that are good. Because, seriously, you make them rhyme and put them on a beat, it makes them seem more true, even if they're not.
It's like a form of.
It's like they're approved somehow. Natural approves because you're on rhythm.
It's like a chemical reaction or a form of like alchemy. Like that frequency is like magical and causes and hits you in a way that you respond well to it.
On a mathematical level, it's sort of like all the numbers and stuff, they add up to the right. Like there's the golden number or the golden rule or whatever. I think it's like phi or something. It's like a specific kind of like pattern that it repeats in nature, and it's like beauty or something like that. And so it's sort of like natural.
Well, there is that, but yes, there's that.
Yeah, and like the general frequency too, not even the specific. Specific is really important too, but also the broad.
And we're just as visually we're set up to find symmetry more pleasing. We're set up auditorially to find symmetry more pleasing. So learning an awareness of a beat, speaking on beat, even in conversation, is a really powerful method of charisma and moving the dynamics of the environment around you.
Probably the two most important, one left psyche and one right psyche. The right psyche is basically being on rhythm. Because that's the rhythm, you have to serve that way. If you do, you're cool. If you don't, you wipe out. The other one is, on the left, we've been doing this with Bardic Beats, is being able to say what you need to say in a sentence, in a paragraph, in a page, in a little pamphlet, in a book, in a forever dissertation. To be able to have you say in the correct size for the encounter is very important. So the size and the speed of the data, very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the another way that people have done these sort of things is walking. Like you tap out the beat. Basically, walking is a natural metronome. So that's another way to do it rather than being attached to a computer. If you do it as a walking beat, and that's one of those things that's been used by the military. And
she just put a simple it's actually like online, so it's a website. She has it on her cell phone, so we pretty much just have metronome whenever we want.
Yeah, there's that. I mean, yeah, you can have metronome. There's a metronome app. There's all kinds of little thingies you can go after. But
I'll tell you, Ben, it's amazing how different and more musical it'll sound when you are doing it in rhythm with it, and just hearing that thump, 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 thump along your voice. It feels like natural. Your body going, go, Ben. Go, Ben. It feels like Nashville is clapping you along.
Interesting. And this is just taking like anything that I say. I can just do this, and then I can make it a.
Yeah.
That's cool.
If we're here, if you guys are doing an example of it, Ben, I'll let you. Do you have a computer where you can go to the internet besides here? If so, go to Metronome Online.
Metronome Online.
I was going to add, salesmen use that beat process, and they use an awareness of their beat so that they can motivate their whoever they're trying to sell to be on board with it, that kind of thing. So it's used in all kinds of ways.
And when she's talking about there's actually two uses of the word beat, which is interesting. Again, it goes back to us saying the two ways. One beat that they know, and in sales, for example, what you're talking about, is that the sizing I was talking about, and also a playlist of beats, so you can be natural, but in your head you're like, I've told them this. Casual, 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 and drop beat 32, 4. You can keep in your head, almost like a card player, what I've told this person. So even though it is even organic, but you're so used to counting cards, counting beats, like what I've transmitted to them. The other use that she's also kind of alluding to of beat is the time and the metronome. Not necessarily metronome, but there's a rhythm to how you deliver that doesn't sound lazy or rushed. And when you're nervous or you're feeling sluggish, either way, you keep that way of delivering it that makes the customers happy. You don't you don't do that. So you basically establish this rhythm. And so same thing when you do like a song, you'll find some days you lack energy, and some days you're a little hyper-amped. The metronome teaches you how you deliver that song every time. Whatever the beat is, you can find it, and always is that way.
There's kind of like an internal metronome that you're kind of going off of without really knowing it, but having that kind of consistency can really flower what the work you have. Because I mean, I have like the creative spirit and the energy and things like that. But putting it on a metronome will give it, it will root it in something so it can grow.
Right, and like the same awareness, the awareness of that actual beat, like when you got anxious and it affected your breathing, and like you knew you had the breath, but you would have just stayed on beat and powered through it, because you would have had that beat. When you have that metronome beat set in your head, it's a way to not, like, you don't get nervous because you're on that beat. You're breathing on that beat.
It's kind of like you're going for a jog, but then like you don't want to keep sprinting and then walking sprint. It's not really the most efficient way to do it. So it's there's a pace.
It's very helpful if you can dial into Zai, particularly for doing this. Z also helps. But I would imagine having Zai is really, really good for like just that even right on.
Z's actually really good, I think, for structure. I find Nexi has really helped me a lot when I'm like doing song structure. But when it comes to like doing on the beat, that's kind of a feel. Zai's very good at like a feel of something.
Yeah, I always have trouble. I always have trouble sticking to a beat.
Me too.
Often what I'm doing is rushing. Just as a Nijai, I'm always like trying to get to the next one, so I'm always rushing.
Be ahead of the beat.
Yeah, a little bit ahead.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I don't even do music, but it's like a Nijai thing.
You'll find the state habits too, Ben, and this is why it's really good to keep trained when you use the metronome. Is you'll find that sometimes you'll be getting really into the song. That's a good thing. You're getting really into it with your nai. And what will happen is you'll start like being one with the song in your simulator, and you'll go into like slow time. You'll start like, and then ba ba ba. You're so into it that you're like slowing it. It feels natural. The simulator of Nai, the more it gets into something, it's like you get like trance mode. So you'll find sometimes being able to do trance mode on beat. You have to work that so you can just really drift and get into it while not slowing down. The other one is G. G gets pumped up. Ba, 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 ba. It gets worked up. It will rush ahead as it gets fired up. So the Nai drifting and the G pumped up, being able to allow that to happen and still being on Zai beat will make the V stage presence. Bam.
Yeah, and anchoring both ends, the Nai and the G, to the singular beat is a way to avoid. Because I know my dad talked in that way. Like, it's a way for him to avoid being overly out there or overly Nai dissociated out. So it's a way for him to be. It's a way to be present on.
I'm not quite sure what you were saying. Are you saying your dad used it more for?
I think he used it all the time naturally. Like, 'cause he played music when, like, it's one of the, like, it, like just in school. I mean, he learned and he played in the band or whatever through high school and whatever. So it's like he learned to be on beat with the music, and his voice was always on beat. Like it's just what he did. So he never really had to be nervous. And like you said, I think he did also have that play card, that Rolodex of things that he could always throw out there in time. So he had those kind of beats too. But he never had to be nervous because he was always on that beat, and he never had to rush the conversation or make the other person feel rushed. It was really actually one of those things where it was a connection building thing, because he didn't have to concentrate on the beat. He could totally listen, be present for what you were saying. And not, like, because he wasn't trying to do the like, you can tell when somebody is like building the conversation while you're talking, sort of thing, And because he had that beat and those things already cataloged, he could be totally present for what you were saying without having to catalog the next thing he was going to say. So it actually built, like, being totally present, listening to someone is like a really awesome skill to have. It's an awesome gift to the other person.
In acting and deficit preferences that the Naiji versus Nijai will have, but both are important to be excellent, which is the ability to summon the being from within. The other, not excels at that, Naiji. Then the other one that's considered equally important is being able to be in scene, to listen, to allow the scene to just take you where the scene goes. So those two abilities together are like considered the ideal. So these workouts will take you to a full cycle, but they'll start from a starting place first. That's more on the mental side. I think one thing I was saying is that she's kind of alluding to is both the Nejeds can sometimes overdo their Zed's power. We mentioned that. But people may wonder, how do you do the Zed strongly and not overdo it? Creative expression is probably the best way to do that, because like I'm talking about right here, the goal is not to be like ba 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 like monotone. No. Yeah. The goal is to be as into it as you can and be on beat. And that, to me, is like the quintessential, that's a perfect amount of like Zai modulation for an IG. You got a great idea, you're pumped up and delivering, and you keep like, this is important, I'm fired up, but you stay on beat. That makes Zai like a handling. It's giving you suspension, it's keeping you on the rail, but it's not slowing you down. It's just keeping you hitting where you're supposed to hit.
You actually, like in music, for example, you often don't want to be right on the beat. You want to be on the what's called the upbeat, which is the space between the beats. So there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you break that down into 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. A lot of times you want to hit on the ands on the up, so you want to go.
Well, that's getting a bit more advanced theory for him right
that's
now.
Cool. That makes sense because it's
because
we're not speaking very literally when we're saying be on the beat. We're
it's
cool to note that
it's kind of actually, it's like boom, 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 but within the booms, there's a whole arc, and there's a whole bunch of things you can do within that arc.
There's like natural, there's like infinite complexity to like the evolution of how you say it.
But the main thing to start with is simply.
But the good general principle of being on beat is a
internalizing with your inner Zai, that ability to know a set perfect beat is just, that's the first step. That you can't get to those infinite variations without
starting there. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's like the first gear of Mojo reading. Like
right.
That's a really good analogy. It's the most concrete, and then you get to more tacit and more cool.
But
exactly.
I would mention is being on beat though is not always the way to go, and that's why I was saying.
Yeah, because sometimes there are advantages to doing it freeform, and
there are. For example, acting is basically prose done done freeform. As far as the timing, and in that case,
it's like free verse poetry,
Yeah, it has those advantages. The advantage of being on beat is you have this backing of natural law rhythm, and any other artist can layer on that, and that's a huge deal. But without doing the beat, naturally you're probably going to deliver the things with less poetry and more embodiment. So there's more responsibility that you be the character that's delivering it.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because
this was a good song for doing that, I felt, because it was like it's very much about the self.
Even there though, like Coach said, there's value to both freeform and beat, but still having an awareness of the beat makes freeform stronger too. Like if you choose not to be on beat, it makes the freeform stronger.
Yeah, and vice versa. for sure. Like freeform, a lot of
And knowing
times.
what it's like to freeform makes the beat stronger. Cool.
Yeah, because freeform allows you to sometimes come up with ideas that being on beat, if you're thinking about it at the time, it'll inhibit you. So you kind of just write them however you want to write them, and then you can decide what you want to do next with it. That's important too, as far as creative expression, is realizing that really this is like how ideas come. It could be for, particularly say, just start with words. From here, like say, Ben, you could actually use this to build a whole bunch of different things. You could take this and put it on beat, or you could actually rewrite it as a scene, where you're saying these things, but you're actually saying it as like a character rather than a poem. So it's important that like your Nez powers keep elastic with that, because the main thing is to try to figure out what natural law is showing you, and then be able to give it a good form, a good home. That's what you want.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I'd like to hear for everyone, but I know Bruno, you do quite a bit with creative expression. I'm curious some of your thoughts.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, like what you guys were saying. Like Struggle, for example, what you were saying about beat versus like rigid versus fluid time. Like everything's always a shade. Well, at least to me, like everything always seems like a shade. There's nothing fully rigid or fully fluid. And so like the interplay between the two is very important. Like for example, jazz and blues. One of the things that makes it so compelling is this elasticity in time. There's a tendency for the implied beat. The soloist, the singer, or the lead player often is a little bit behind that, almost as if they're a little bit drunk and slurring their words. They're like a little bit behind the beat, and so it gives it a very like, it gives it a very characteristic feel. What's that?
Yeah,
It's a language.
spoken word tends to be a bit more on beat, but even spoken word, like the rap artists, can be. It's generally considered to be most masterful to be in the pocket, which is right on. It's spoken word is different than singing that it's more percussion based. But even still, it is considered cool sometimes to have this like lazy tales where you come behind it. It's considered drunk, a little swaggery, kind of like whatever. And then also you can be a little ahead of the beat, which seems scared, urgent, impatient. So you can go both ways.
Yeah, Cuban music, on the other hand, often is shifted a little bit ahead of the beat, although it's technically different in the way that blues is done. But let's just speaking very generally, blues and jazz are often a little bit behind the beat, and Cuban and Latin music is often ahead of the beat. And so the interplay between the two is like.
Bruno, I find this fascinating. Just one thing as the topic is creative expression, I was curious a bit more from like, because this might get a bit more music heavy, which is cool, but it's like as far as like how it relates to just anyone who is doing creative expression.
Well, I think the bigger principle that I'm getting at is that being behind the beat can make you feel overconfident, maybe a little overly confident. And being ahead of the beat can make you feel very charged up. And in particular for Naiji, this has a lot to do with the G flex factor. Flexing behind the beat, going a little bit late, makes you feel, like you're slurring your words, like you're lean back in a swagger mode.
I found what happens to me, what he's talking about here is a good principle of Ben. He's kind of doing the Z for, which is interesting. I don't come at it that way myself. I believe I know what you're talking about. The way it usually works for me, and I've been doing some reading on several Naiji artists, this is how they do it as well. You start where you have to get to where you can memorize the words. And once you can do that, you can be on the beat. And then once you're able to be on the beat, you then develop a swagger. And you'll kind of start bleeding before the beat and after the beat. You'll just do it. It's weird. You first have to get where you can be on it. It's like dancing. Next thing you know, you start kind of styling it a bit, and really just getting pumped up, just getting into character, it'll feel better to be a little before it or a little after. But for Naiji with Zai, we don't actually have to kind of like, for me anyway, I don't have to do that when I write it. When I write, I kind of write like directly on beat. And as a perform, I find that I just naturally, as I do it, start being a little behind or ahead. It feels
Yeah,
good.
it sort of evolves more as you play with it after that.
But it
'cause
comes
it's
from
like,
feeling like me and the
it's
beat.
like it's not
I
set
know
in
where it
stone,
is.
you know. It's you know.
But what?
Bruno made me think of it by what he's talking about, the cockiness that comes from being ahead of the beat, or the urgency going forward. And to me, what he's talking about is kind of like how I feel as a character. And if I know the beat, it's sort of like I know where the scene is going.
Mhm.
And I can drop my voice in cadence, but I already know how the scene, in this case the song, but how the song is going to be going. And then I kind of like get right in time with it, and then I get funky with it. You know what I mean? It's weird. Like, but first you have to get in time, and then you get like, then the broken rhythm happens.
Yeah, you start getting it right on, and then you know the broken rhythm
It's like
kicks
you
in.
get cocky to come up with the words and the delivery. Then you have to kind of like mature yourself to get on a Zai beat. And then you go back to 9G, cockier than ever, because now you actually can do it on beat, and then you kind of like, you know, you kind of get slinky with it.
Yeah, that awareness of the beat allows you to play with it more and be more comfortable playing with it because you're not thinking about it as you do it. You know where the beat is. And from the Zhai point of view, from the Zhai listener point of view, like Bruno was saying, it evokes emotion as you present that either on, off, slightly ahead, slightly behind. It evokes emotion in the Zhai as it resonates on our tower. So there's that whole push-pull thing that happens as a Naiji speaks on that.
What she's mentioning there is directly.
Yeah, you have the shy, but also the knee, right?
That's what I'm saying. The G is going to start swaggering, and when it does, it'll flex on the beats. Once it finds the beat, it'll stomp on them in its wiggly, flexy way. It doesn't stomp directly. So once it finds the stomp points, it'll put a little funky on it. But then the other element is not only is it a flex, that's what the Zhai is responding to, but the knee, mastery. You can tell when a person is offbeat
when they know the beat on purpose
versus they're ahead or behind the beat because they feel like it. That's Nai, or it can also be Vi another way. But for Naiji, that's the Nai. Like I know this song, I misstep. I stepped exactly where I felt like stepping because I know where the beat is, and so the knee can tell, like, and just like V can tell Vi, like that was meant, that was on purpose. They did it on purpose.
Yes, it's like because knee knows whether you intentionally stepped off beat and that you intended to make that move that evoke that emotion because we see that. So because we see the beats, we don't like. We don't have that internal metronome with the Zai like y'all do, but we see them. So when we see them performed, we know whether, he did that on purpose. That was the coolest thing ever. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the genres that I think express a lot of this very well, because a lot of modern music is made on a computer, and it's very metronomic, and it sort of kills this kind of vibe a little bit. It's one of my major problems in life. It's like, how can I join the computer with like a fluid? The computer is always going to be on beat. It's always going to be perfectly on time. I mean, I can make it move off time, but in that case, it's also a robotic shifting. Like I can. So how can I make it?
I found myself also songwriting. The general consensus is you can go from the words to the beat or the beat to the words, but the music industry generally they favor beat first. And I found that sometimes it makes the songs sound a little, I don't know, too mathematic. You can tell they just made the words that would go along with the beat, and it feels like they were put in a box.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I would probably start with the words first, and then find a beat that I can kind of make work with those words, and then match the beat with the words.
You'll find, Ben, with that, you're going to have the metronome. You'll have to work to make them fit and flow. It takes some effort, but I find it sexier, and there's more interesting words because you actually had to figure out how to get what you wanted to say on beat.
Yeah, no, I'm totally on board with what you guys are saying. In fact, that's exactly why. What's that?
But I'm sorry, very important. You should be able to go both ways. In fact, with Bruno, I'm planning to do one where he just does a beat first and I write from that. You should be able to go from either end. You should.
Yeah.
Right, right, absolutely. But I guess what I was getting to is that I'd recommend you guys listening to a couple different genres. In particular, in terms of this whole getting ahead and behind the beat thing. So getting behind the beat is a very traditional blues and jazz thing, which comes along with.
I want you to give us information, but if you could do it in a concise manner, because I want to move on to something else in a second here.
Sure. I'll post a link to a video that talks a lot about this. So the two different genres that I want to talk about.
I think this might be better in a link because it's now getting a bit musical, which I think Ben is interested in because it'll help him with his next levels of delivery. But for tonight's discussion, I want to focus on creative expression. So I want to move over to Glenn a second. Before I do, Bruno, if you could maybe talk a little bit from your perspective, I'm curious about the need for you to creatively express. The feeling of it's coming on you, the feeling of working with it to make it something, and then the feeling of putting it out. So you just kind of talk, because I believe that will be universal to everyone, and I'm curious what Ben has, Glenn has saying this as well.
Okay.
Because all creative expression is basically taking stuff from yourself in the world, taking all these patterns and passions, whatever, and then figuring out what it means to you, and giving it a form, and then taking it out to the world.
Sure. Well, let me finish my thought in just a sentence. Basically, like blues and jazz is behind the beat, Cuban and Latin music is ahead of the beat, and I recommend you listen to both to get sort of a feel for just how they do it. They're both G swagger in the extreme.
What he says just is true, and I want to listen to. We post a link. Pay attention because he has some very good things to say there. One thing I'll just add to that though is that naturally Nijai tend to learn this way. Naiji, you'll learn more from your simulator. You're going to want to find a way to sound off. Get to where you write something or just get pumped enough that you just start sounding off. When you do, you're going to fall in love with the sound of Ben's voice. Ben's voice has things to say. And then from that, you'll find where to put it. Because often what you don't realize, Ben, is your Nye has already been giving you, what he's doing is great. He's going to give you a bunch more infusions. But you're at the age where you've already had a ton of infusions from anime characters that gave great speeches, the way your parents talk that you like or don't like, teachers you like or don't like. Your 9G has just been sucking that in for your whole life, and you already have a way you like to deliver when your swag is on. You want to make sure you know that. But then what Bruno's saying, and next he also says a lot, then study everything a little bit, see what your swag likes to link up with, to expand your swag and to connect it. But as a Naiji, you'll kind of want to sound off because if you don't hear your voice in what you do, Ben, you won't like it. That's just Naiji 101.
Well, the reason I mentioned blues and jazz and Cuban music is because these genres have influenced literally every genre.
I think it's a fabulous idea. It's a fabulous idea. I was letting him know that as a Naiji, it's important that you have a form that you already want to be, and then you absorb.
No, I understand, but what I'm saying is...
You're like, ooh, I like that from jazz. I like that, but you'll need to kind of know, I want to build this.
Well, the thing is, I mean, I know Ben likes anime music and soundtrack music and video game music, and but if he liked hip hop or R&B or rock and roll, whatever, it doesn't matter what genre he names, it's going to be influenced by blues and jazz on the one hand and Cuban and Latin music on the other.
The point I was making is that that's absolutely true. Everything Bruno said, that is absolutely true. The point I'm making is that it is a general principle, particularly for Naiji, is you already have an internal rhythm. And one thing all Naiji do, regardless if they do music or not, so this is separate from music, all Naiji, when they do what they do, they sound off. They can do it to music, they can do it without music, and they can do it in writing. But they sound off. And there's a way they like to write. And you know, Starglow, a lot of your favorite Naiji authors, maybe Bruno, you as well, they immediately just start breaking conventions. Or we try to say, what Z writing category in the end? I don't know, about 1,500. Seriously, that's just, and you don't want to lose that. As a Naiji, that's precious your Nai does that, is it already kind of has a way.
Okay, so that gets into your next question, which is which for me is interesting because it's something I've been thinking a lot about, which is that I find my work itself, like the work, not me as the artist, but the work itself, it's very Nai and Ji. And when I look at Nai Ji artists, or even your work, for example, Coach, it's very me and Jai. Like the Rosetta Stone, it's like totally me and Jai. It's like this big collage of like, it's basically a huge collage. It's like this gigantic collage of science and spirituality and all this stuff thrown together, which is very me and Jai.
It is, but it comes from 9G.
It comes from 9G, and obviously it's got that.
Because like the source versus the product.
Quest
Right?
is 9G. I want to do that, and that was the quest.
But
The quest was come forth and make a Spirit Force collage.
It's basically like you're projecting Nexi onto that file, onto that collage.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
That's for sure.
And when I look at Nijai artists, on the other hand, I see a lot of the, like for example, a lot of the directors that direct some of the most like some of the most movies that you would associate with Nai and G a lot, like The Godfather, for example.
Oh, yeah. George Martin.
Or Game of Thrones.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very much like a projection of Nai and G.
Very super gritty, natural law, raw, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it's very massive in momentum, and it's very heavy in tone, but it's coming from a Nijai, and I find that very interesting, and so that's really helped me identify and understand like the way my creative process works, because a lot of it, when I approach it, I'm basically looking for like when I'm thinking of any sort of expression, but particularly music, which is what I do, I'm thinking of, as an Nijai, I'm thinking colorful, diverse, fun, interesting, flashy, but at the heart of it, it's got to be heavy hitting, it's got to be meaningful, and it's got to have like momentum, drive forward. It's got to be going somewhere, like in a particular direction with a purpose.
I think what you've hit on is a really great principle here, Bruno. This is great. What he's talking about is probably the greatest reward for doing this work, and that is peak pathway completion. It's so challenging for people in general, particularly, say, Nijez, because a lot of our powers, particularly momentum channels, they're not as easily understood or approved of, so it can be challenging to do a full cycle and realize what the reward cycle, the effort and reward cycle is. So this is very much true. But Ben, you may find starting out, you'll need to kind of say thoughts that are on your mind, but I'm going to jump on what Bruno was saying there. You will find that just naturally, for example, having a Starglow and Brew here begins this process, but you can do in your mind as well, which is it's going to be a different voice of the voice that chose the song you did. Make sense?
It's going to be a different voice than that voice?
It's going to grow. So the first voice you had when you did it was, this is something I want to do. Mm-hmm. Today's voice was, this is something I believe in, and you were like, want to make sure there was no ambiguity on that. Okay, so that's like increasing your peak pathway with the conscious side. What Bruno's alluding to, this is going to lead you to your full peak pathway, and it'll start with this. Almost always for me, it starts this way. You'll want to do that song again, but imagine your other is the audience. So now you're expressing your Naiji sentiments, but not to just yourself or to other Naiji, but to Nijai, that you more than anything want to approve what you're saying. So you're going to say what you believe is a Naiji, but in a way you hope that your audible will give a nod of approval to. That will definitely take it up another class. Now what Bruno's saying is, over time this will get further. You may take whole songs where like your fierce way is Ben Fierce Naiji, that's great, it's your momentum, but your other's like, I would think it was so cool if you would do that with this sweet song. Your other will ask you to take your powers and use them in ways that you wouldn't actually do. And you get really far like that to where like me with Rosetta Stone or George Marr with his book, where like most of what people know them for as far as their visual producer media is actually more on the other side of their peak pathway. But George Marr could only do that because he had his strong conscious powers that could make that world that support his other projecting into it. So it's awesome.
I think that point that Bruno's bringing up there that you're talking about, Coach, is that creativity.
I want to hear this, but I've not heard from Glenn a lot tonight. I want to make sure that we get to hear from him some. There's a lot of points we could talk about here, Glenn. Have any of these kind of jumped on your radar in any kind of way?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. I kind of feel like I don't really know what to speak on it, actually.
Anything at all, really.
Mhm.
Have you read about the Julie Bell, who's like a Nijai bodybuilder? I think one of the
I
few.
don't lead him yet, Bruno. He's kind of finding his thoughts. I don't let his nod just sort of unfurl a little bit. I think he's been kind of waiting, and so now it'll take a little bit just to unfurl. I'll let him do that.
Okay, sure, but I'm also open to sort of being asked questions too.
Okay.
Like maybe I can.
Bruno.
Yeah. So I was going through the collages and I saw Julie Bell, who's a fantasy artist, and she's married to I believe Naiji Boris Vallejo.
Correct.
Right, and she used to be a bodybuilder, and Glenn, because you're so interested in that, and there's actually not many Nijai bodybuilders who are,
Right.
it's not just naturally part of the peak pathway, but she seems to be like extremely productive. Like she seems to have found multiple outlets for the Naiji, her Naiji other. First it was in bodybuilding, and now it's in fantasy art. It's like this Frank Frazetta, very hyper real type artwork. And I'm curious if you've read about her or if you know anything.
No, actually, I didn't know anything about her. I'm looking at the pictures of her right now.
Really
And,
good. Very
it's
good.
quite interesting, actually. Yeah, and I don't know if it's accurate to say that bodybuilding is not in the peak pathway for Nijez or whatever. I kind of I don't agree to that
That's not what I meant.
specifically, but
There's not a lot of samples. But
It's
There's not a lot of
not
samples.
something
Sure.
that
I think the accurate statement
that's all I meant.
seem to be something that Niche are into at a competitive level.
Sure, yeah. I mean, yeah. It's not something that I expect to see a lot of Nijai in,
Yeah.
but it is cool to see that there are some that do that. So
And it's interesting to look at if you look at pictures of her when she was bodybuilding and now, it's like two
Yeah.
different people. I was like, is this two different Julie Bells?
Oh, she's still
Um,
pretty fit.
She's still pretty fit, but it's like two completely different people. I mean, I don't know too much about that body sculpting, so maybe that just happens to everyone if you stop upkeeping. I guess it does, but
That level of doing your body is actually a bit strenuous, and one thing that maybe by Niche I don't get into it as much is there are certain sports that by their nature to excel at them are not the healthiest on the body. Bodybuilding, actually, to really do it, you're kind of contorting your muscles, puffing them, doing things to make them have this look as opposed to being healthy. One thing on that, Glenn, when we get into the fitness bubble, which is coming very soon, a couple weeks, we'll get to that big time, is we should probably add in, I think, like outdoorsy stuff. That also seems like a kind of fitness. There's like people get to fitness from the bodybuilding or the isometric angle or whatever, but you also people get into it mainly from like healthy diet. They mainly focus on healthy diet, and then there's like healthy lifestyle. You know what I mean? Healthy, clean. I think that
Yeah,
kind of all kind of
I find that health tends
because
to
the
be a bit
diet
more
and
of
NHI should a lot in that.
Niche, I tend to come at it from that direction because it's the whole balance, the feeling of your body. It's that whole thing rather than.
and I think that worrying
Because
about
much NHI and negative J were very athletic.
and I find that considering health and like longevity tends to be a bit more universally appealing to people more, I would say.
well, yeah. I mean, I'm not.
or at
saying-
least it should be, I would say, because it's like everyone wants to or should want to live a long life and keep their peak pathway going, as long as they can and such.
That's actually the most important thing to me personally as well. It's the longevity, being healthy, just all around, just being, you like in terms of like your soul, your physically, your body, and all that. So that's sort of like all should be in a good place at all times, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm not necessarily like overly focused on
You can do that.
bodybuilding.
Be into bodybuilding and stuff like that.
Yeah, bodybuilding itself is it's something that's a way to do that. I think it's like
Yeah.
Like specialized.
Like
Yeah, I'm not-
it's like a specialized kind of.
it's a very focused on specifically. Well, I mean, there's like steroids and stuff, so it's not necessarily always going to be healthy like that.
It's
And-
very aesthetics based, which is not.
It's very aesthetically based, and aesthetics is it's an important thing. I mean, I value that, but it's not necessarily to the point where you take it to like beyond there's a point by which you don't want to go past like a healthy point, and I see that line, and I don't like it when it tends to look not as like natural after a certain point. So I don't personally like. It doesn't really it doesn't seem appealing to me once it reaches beyond that point. But there is a line that where it looks like, yeah, that looks good. That looks
Yeah,
like
I mean,
the
I think
best.
it's good that it's out there. That people are are pushing the limits, are competing.
Sure, sure. I mean,
I mean,
there's
it's kind of like, because like there are a lot of activities that are like that, where like if you do it enough, it may not necessarily, in certain ways it can be diminishing in certain other areas, but maybe it might be worth it for a person to do that just to really be competitive, push things, as far as it can go, because they really care about that and really want to advance themselves in that area.
yeah, pushing the limits is it's also good. But as far as this artist
It just becomes more specialized as you get
yeah,
in that
yeah.
direction.
As far as this artist goes, I don't know. For me, it's cool. Like I'm completely. It's like this Julie Bell character. I think it's awesome. I think what she's doing is cool, and I might take a look at her work. It's just fun and interesting to learn about all these different people and what they do and what they find and what they get out of the things that they do. Like she apparently was a bodybuilder. I'm like, okay, cool. I might take a look at that.
I'm gonna ask you a question.
Yeah. So yeah.
Is then on the topic here of creative expression is, do you know the time when you were feeling strong with creative expression, or something that you felt was helpful in that way? And creative does not have to be like art. It can be science. It can even come with an idea for like change the politics of your school. Basically, you have something like an idea that's unformed. You're going to try and give it form. Have you ever done that? For anything? I know you've not done the visuals, that's one thing for sure. I mean, we worked with the ebook. Have there been other things? For example, you talk well, so some nights you don't. So clearly you've had experience actually talking and getting your ideas across because you sound like you've done that a lot. Was that always the case? Did your family support that or encourage speaking on your opinions and defending them, or was that something you learned in school or just on your own? That's creative expression right there. Particularly new or controversial ideas.
I don't know if you can hear us. Glenn, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
I thought he was talking to Bruno.
No,
I'm
it's on
talking
you.
to you. I'm talking to you, Glenn.
Oh, sorry, I didn't catch anything.
It's the thing, like, the way you talk, you clearly actually express your ideas well. You're used to actually having opinions and putting them out there, even dealing with some pushback. So I was curious because there are many riffs of Naiji who don't do that. Not even writing, some do it just writing, but you actually do it with your voice well. I was curious where that started. Did your family encourage having opinions on ideas and be able to defend them, or was that something that was awakened at school, or just on your own, or?
The writing?
No, basically speaking your mind, thinking up this process,
Well,
having ideas that aren't immediately going to have a place for them, forming a way to say them to give them their best chance, and then putting them out there.
that is, yeah, I like that you noted that, Coach. It's something that I noticed in myself too, which is like, yeah, I tend to have ideas, and I tend to look at the way people see things, and I take note of that, and then I see the little, I don't want to say, like, I see the biases that they have. I notice those kinds of things, and I see like, well, there's a place for, like, they're sort of, I can see that they're kind of ignoring this one aspect of like natural law, which I think should have a voice. And then I want to give that little aspect a certain voice so that it has a place in the world, generally speaking. So it starts off like that, I guess. But it doesn't necessarily have to start at that. I just sort of have certain things on my mind that I want to say, and then I just practice until you figure out a way in order to get it out, and then you.
Were you always your family and friends to be like that? For example, myself, I went through a period of several years early on where I had a lot of ideas in my head, but I didn't voice them. I was known as being, kind of a nice, quiet boy. And then I kind of like started experimenting with talking out what I did alone with other people, and then let the floodgates open. Some nights it's more smooth, some nights you don't do it all. But you definitely do it. I was curious, do you remember when that kind of turned on, or when people noted that you do that?
When I started to be like, so.
To use the power, to know, like, I'm going to take something in my head spend some time to arrange the words, think about their biases, as you mentioned, so I can deliver it good. Do you remember when you started, like, I'm going to try and see how well I can do at that?
I don't know. I think I've always been doing that ever since I was like very young. I just always had, like, whenever, like, it first started off with me noticing, like, I don't like the way that this person is expressing their ideas. There's something about, like, not that they're saying anything wrong specifically, but I feel like there's something else that I want to add to that. And then it started off with me just doing that, and then I would just be like, oh, and then what about this? And then, well, what about that? And then I started being like, oh, and then this is also important too, and we should also probably think about doing this. And it tends to not. People find it a little bit annoying sometimes, but I kept doing it, and then I started thinking, like, you know what? There's a better way for me to express these ideas, so that it's sort of like, how do I smoothen it so that they kind of like listen to what I have to say, and then they accept it as well, and they're like, I like the way that you shared that, Glenn. It's not just sort of like you coming in like a F-22, like dropping a rocket or something. It's sort of like you kind of like, it's a good, like, notice. It's a good point that you're making, and you're also making it fit in very nicely. So
yeah. I notice you have a very like when you speak, Glenn, you have a very like kind of nice, like very generous, kind way of presenting your ideas. Like even though it's disagreeing, you present it in a way that isn't like too sharp on the other person, right? But you're still honest about what you do.
While still exuding a confidence.
Yeah.
That's a hard balance to do, but you do that well.
Yeah, I try to do that as best as I can. When I can't do that, it's usually when my Daru is on me a little bit. If that's ever something that you guys have noticed, but I try to be as gentle and as kind about how I bring my ideas in.
Before I hand back to Starglen, Starglen, you're definitely next to that. But I just want to ask just one question, Glenn. Is then, have you noticed then that there have been perhaps some ongoing topics that maybe over the years you've been working with, kind of like pieces, like you said, like you like helping to correct people sometimes. Has there been like a repeater? It'd be like, that's a conversation. I remember like early on helping people like some basic logical fallacies when they get pumped up, and how to like communicate in a way that wouldn't like totally shut them down, that maybe they weren't seeing that clearly. I've done that talk a lot, and when I was younger, it wasn't as smooth. And over the years, like I've had that conversation. It's kind of creative expression because you're kind of having that conversation again.
Yeah, I think that there are several conversations that I want to have, several things that are kind of like on me, like little chips on my shoulders that I need to like, or things on my chest, or things like I need to say, but I don't. I kind of just wait until I see that opportunity come on me, and then I'm like, okay. Now I need to. I think I have the voice now, so that I can say that properly in the way that I want to get the idea across, without like destroying, without like hurting whatever it is that the thing. Because my other, she really wants me to make sure that I don't go in there and just kind of like, tear down the paint and everything on the wall. I want to make sure like a really, as smooth as I can, but also at the same time. As honestly and as as bringing a sort of character that I think is important that I should do, but until I
actually had a question for you, Glenn. I had a question for you along those lines, because I know that you have Nijai women in your family. I understand it. If I understand correctly, your mother's a Nijai, of course, and your father's a Naiji, right? And like I've noticed that there's a interaction that you learn from having your other in your household as a child that maybe those that don't have that don't get. And I'm wondering if you're because you do have this wonderful sort of ability to take the other's point of view, take the Nijai point of view when you're speaking, which is really a masterful thing to do. And I'm wondering how that came about in your life, how you learned to use that. Was it repeated use of it, or how did that come about?
I don't know. I think I just learned certain things throughout my life, I guess, that kind of made that happen. I don't know. There's nothing that like I can think of exactly like that led to. first of all, I have to say thank you because I don't really see that kind of. I always see myself in terms of like trying to improve and become better, and I don't really see myself as being that, particularly amazing or, or anything like that. But
there's always room for improvement.
yeah.
You have strong abilities. It's important to acknowledge when you do have it because.
Okay. Yeah. I guess I do.
That's an honest assessment. Is to actually even give yourself the proper credit to notice.
Right.
Like then today you said your voice. You're like it felt strong. I think we all agree. Objectively speaking, it was strong. It's good to note that.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as like, I guess I just learned just living. I guess just certain things came up, I guess, and then I handled them the right way, or at least I tried to learn from those experiences the best that I could. And maybe having Nijai in my family led to that. But I don't think anyone is not beyond that. I think anyone can learn that, no matter what kind of.
And I think that. Likewise, even if you have Nijai in your family, there are a lot of Naiji that aren't, good speakers and have confidence issues.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to place cause and effect on it. I was just curious about that because you never like there's a subtle thing that you do where you take on their point of view and you either I don't know what powers go into that exactly, Nai and Zai probably, but you assess that and you step back, but you can see that you take, like even in text and emails back and forth when we were working on the ebook, you step back and assess that and say, is that true or is that not true? And set your ego aside in doing that. That's something that's not I've found common at all in any mojo, but to set that aside and to evaluate, is that a valid resonation, or is it do I have something that needs to be taken account on there? And then you express that taking into account, or either you agree and you go, oh yeah, okay, that's cool, and that's what we'll do, and then you like move forward with that. Like there's no, you just move forward with it, or you say, but you haven't taken this into account, and you present that in a way that's not at all. It's not overpowering, but it's also not to be like there's no wiggle room on it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I think
it sort of goes with the
that's something
rhythm.
anyone can do if they actually have a good connection with their spirits. But having real life people to work on, that's excellent to add bonuses to that. What she's referring to is basically the difference of Ji, what it's used to presenting things to Ji, or even Z, as opposed to it's used to presenting things in the presence of Jai, because Ji tends to think in terms of an arc, and it waits for the effect after it fires for effect, but Jai weighs it during the entire arc.
Real time.
The entire airtime, so you can kind of have a smoother control over it, and you kind of note the Jai as your Ji goes forward, seeing how is it being done, like a moment-to-moment read.
Yeah,
I think okay.
Our conversation at the beginning about rhythms, like you tend to have really good rhythm when speaking with Nijai.
Yeah.
Like back when Infinity was here, like
Right. I think okay. I guess what that is I sometimes I kind of like project in my head how various people are going to react to the way in which I present my voice to them, like, and everyone kind of like has a point and it has an opinion in my head, and they kind of come in and be like, oh, well, you make sure you don't do this, and then I was like, make sure this is also taken into account, and make sure this is that, and make sure this, and then after all that sort of like peeling away of like me trying to make sure that I find the right way to express it, then eventually there comes a point where I kind of express it with taking all of that into account as much as I can, and then just kind of presenting it forward from there. And then it usually goes over well, but then there's also always something that I missed that needs to be taken into consideration. Then I hold on to that and try and make sure that I do so next time. And being with other Nijai it helps because I I've learned, I guess, whether or not I wanted to or not, like I had to take those kinds of Jai cues into consideration, and it's just an ongoing thing, I guess, and yeah.
Because your ability,
It comes first and foremost, though, from spirits, and people can help elevate that dialogue. But that's the first one.
That's
because
true, yeah.
Your samples in your environment might be off. They could actually be something you have to watch for mistraining. Because for myself, I know two things that have been related to this is, one, my mom and sisters are Naiji, but my mom is into spiritual stuff, but not so much art stuff, and my sisters are super into that as well. But that is how a lot of Naiji ladies are, and those were my Naiji ladies that are more like-minded myself. Having said that, growing up, I didn't have a lot of experience with them. I had experience with my sister as my mom. But in my head, Lady X, my Naiji lady spirit friend, she was often saying, kind of like correcting their behavior or saying how they would prefer to do it. And I had that dialogue there. And then when I met my first Naiji females out in the world and became friends with them, I kind of went right to the interaction I had with Lady X and made sure really not to interact like I interact with my sisters and my mom, which I had lots of XP on. I had lots of XP with that kind of interaction, but I particularly didn't do it. And then when I met my first Nijai ladies in romantic interests, sometimes they were with fellas that weren't treating them right, and they were Naiji. But I knew they were treating them wrong, and I never do the Nijai. I do with Nexi for years, and I knew how she liked to be interacted with, and I could tell, like, I don't think that they like being treated like that. But that Naiji, I've been dating that Nijai for a while, so they have more XP as far as like a live person, but it didn't train them right, or you know what I mean? So
Right. And I totally, I want to make sure that I address that point that you mentioned before, Coach, which is, there's a certain kind, like people teach you how to like the way that you want to, the way that they should be, treated, but it starts with your spirits first, and that's something that I really want to make sure that I address as well, because there's always something that I wanted to say. It started with me wanting to say something or do something,
right.
and then I'm not gonna give on that at all. But it's a matter of like how I find a way to make that work in the world, which is important. And sometimes that means that there's gonna be a little bit of conflict every now and then, but you try to make sure that you smoothen those as much as you can. But I take that all into consideration because I want to make sure that I get my ideas across the way that they should be, because I don't want to be, egotistical here, but I have truth that I need to get across, but I want to make sure that I do it properly in the way that it should be done, the most truthful way, I guess, So,
the way that you calibrate for the audience, though, is I think what we're all commenting about your mastery in, because you calibrate for your audience
right.
really
I think what Glenn was noting, and it's important, is that's within the context of delivering the truth he wants to deliver.
Yeah.
And of course the Nijai is going to be, I really like how you delivered that in a Nijai-friendly form. And that's good, and that's the bonus he wants, but on delivering that message. So that's a give and take between it. He needs to say what he needs to say, and then hopes for the best delivery.
But it's not just like Nijai recognized that was an important truth to say. So you get points for both the calibration in a Nijai friendly way, and you get points for putting your worldview out there for them to see. So you get, like, a healthy Nijai is going to look at that, and then you get double bonus points for both the delivery of your worldview in an uncompromising way and the delivery in a calibrated format that's easy to hear. So the double...
Uncompromising and charismatic. Easy.
Yeah, I totally agree in terms of like the impact. Coach,
we recognize how hard that is.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a question, Coach, about what you said about how G delivers things. Basically, it'll do the whole arc and then afterwards assess the impact. it seems to be implicit, and now we know that Nye and Vi are non-real time. They're as far from real time as can be, basically. It seems to be implying that G and Z are also not real time in the sense that they're protocol oriented and protocol and
They have
result
their own
oriented.
time. They have their own time. So if you look at a rock and it's moving up, down, left, right, that's just like Xi and V. Just a rock moving because natural law is bouncing that rock somewhere. Okay. Now, G and Z are going to note when can I duck, when can I hit it, when can I do things to it. Will that bounce in a direction I can corral it and make it mine? So it's taking these real-time occurrences and trying to like structure them and put them in some sort of order. But order is made up. So the worldview and the structures, they're kind of like these temporary things to make some sense out of just the constant stream that is natural law.
Okay, cool. I never realized that. Yeah, all these little things like the face shapes, longer for subjectives, shorter for objectives. Like all these things, like they seem like little details, but like they start piling up, and they just like every time that you learn one of them, it just opens up things like the connections and the understanding.
I
That's
find
really cool.
collaging, for example, helps me revisit some of those lessons I learned that I forgot. I scroll, be like, oh yeah, and I'll remember riffs, and I'll remember these, like, especially when you're taking like lots of data, these big data breakthroughs kind of like come up or resurface. Like, oh yeah.
So the pilot powers are about structuring it in a way that it's a timing thing, but it's a timing to get. How do I get the timing to get the flag forward? Then
Right, which is why it's kind of funny because when you think about time, like classically, as far as like keeping it, that's Z. Z keeps time. But if you went to like what's time, if you were to say what power is, I mean, what we're really saying is existence. That's kind of like V. You know what I mean? Like it's just happening.
Yeah, it feels a lot like V, and also Vi can be thought of as time too, because like even though it's like Z, like as far as the
Yes, no, but here's the thing:
but I like
it's
as far
a
as
record.
a stored like moment,
Right.
like a stored, I
Oh,
guess.
it's not the actual passage. Really, when it comes to the actual passage, V and V are like existence passing
it's the
by.
real time.
Guy and Xi are bouncing, as that happens. Left brain is like, what does that mean, and what do you do with it?
Yep.
So the Ni and the V are the real time. They're evaluating. They're the only ones that are evaluating in real time.
They're routing existence as it's coming along.
The Z and the G are evaluating time as a structure so that they can get the thing
That has
done that they
relevance.
want done.
It has relevance to the worldview. So if your worldview is Vi, and that means you're a Vi farmer of the
Yeah.
farmer family.
And likewise, the tower powers are in real time as well, in relevance to the gather powers.
But they're reactive.
Yeah. So yeah, the gather powers and the tower powers are reactive.
Right. I'll make a simple example of this. This will make it all make sense. If you take Z, which is the classic timekeeping element, we'll compare it to V, like existence going by. There has never, ever been, I don't believe even now, the best one out there, a completely accurate clock, ever.
Yep.
So right there, that tells you there are two things. There's existence going along, and then there's the codifying of it. But the codifying does not make the beat of existence. That's its own thing, which is why the clock has to keep adjusting to get in line with every now and then, even the best ones.
Yeah,
But
but
I'm
what
trying to
I'm
take off
saying
for
is
a
like
second.
the gather powers are and the tower powers are in real time, and thus are associated.
And their abilities, they can flow with it. Their weakness or area that they're limited in is keeping track of it.
Mm-hmm.
What it means and what it can be built into. Because if they did that, they wouldn't be able to stay with it. That's why Ni and V are so fast. They don't figure out what's its structure.
We don't keep track.
No, because that'll
we
slow it
just
down. They go with the moment.
If you try to keep track of,
The best you
you
can
just
do.
don't keep track of it.
The best you can do is to, if you're a gatherer, is to have the rudder, and the rudder is just enough to make sure you don't fall over as you float along.
Yeah, and that's like the a gyroscope. The Zhai is the gyroscope, so it's real time, but it's a gyroscope. It doesn't actually like. I wish I could describe this better.
It gives you a position. It gives you an individual Zai or Zhai position within the mix.
Yeah,
So,
but I mean, like the gather power is always paired with the tower power.
Right, exactly.
They're part of the same compound.
Indeed. Which is why it's also inaccurate to say that existence is just existence separate from meaning and structure. No, it has meaning and structure too. That's why it's phenomenal. You have to have all of it. Natural law is like you cannot make any one of them go away, or more important than the other eight. It just doesn't work.
Right. You can't. It's just that where the focus is, your momentum power, where the focus is, tends to be where you live most of the time. And for Nijai, when we start getting weighed down by specifics, it just makes us vibrate like too tight.
Yeah.
All right, we got to head out here because we're a little bit over. This is a great discussion. I'll just leave on one note something that Star will kind of allude to, Ben. Is you saw the double kind of reward, which is like, ooh, you said it, and then how you said it. It's going to keep going like that. But it's important as an IG. The most important one is that you say it. That you think of something that needs to be said, and then you do it.
Yeah, that's like the Nai, right?
That's a nod.
Yep.
But then, Anija, well, actually, let's have it meet Nexi. She'll initially, her Zhai, her knee will be impressed because that's neat and genius and all that kind of stuff. But then Zhai, its initial reaction is, because the first time you did it, it weighs you based on a first effort. First effort, it's really important that it be truthful and that your intention is good. It can be ugly. It can be a little angry. Those things can happen as long as intention is there. But then, each time you do it after that, the knee will be like, what new wrinkle did you add to make it continually interesting? And the Zhai wants to know, how did you adjust to make the delivery more charismatic or appropriate to the audience? So it keeps going. In fact, it'll keep going. You'll do it, and the Zhai will go, ooh, yay! I wonder if you could do this. Ooh! I wonder if you could do this.
That is so true, Coach.
I can see some comedy starting to come from this already. Right?
It's almost like I almost feel like it's unfair to the Naiji because it's almost like we're not satisfied with what it is, and it's not that we're not satisfied. It's that we know there's more there, and we're like our job is to pull the more there out.
But if they like it, then doing more so that an inspirational will like something. It sounds like a pretty good deal. Natural Law has made it that Kiki is a really good deal. It's a sweet deal, sweetest deal there is. All right, I really have to go. This is a great conversation. Next time is going to be next week we'll do interpretatives, although I think Demas is going to be gone. Charlene, would you like to take me to that? It was Tuesday? All right, next Tuesday, Interpretive Temple, and Charlene will be doing it.
Cool.
All righty.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Hey.
Bye.